Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 4 of the 2017 Tata Steel tournament played on Tuesday the 17th of January. It was an eventful round again, 3 decided games of which 2 won with black and 4 draws. In the challengers group, which is the B group let's say, all 7 games were decided. I'll show you a game of the world champion again, and the main reason is that Magnus Carlsen came into the live broadcast after his game to show what happened. So the comments that I'm going to make in this video are all based on what the strongest player in the world had to say about this game. So quite exciting. Let's get into it. Magnus Carlsen played white in this game in the 4th round, and his opponent was Wei Yi, the Grandmaster from China. Carlsen opened e4 and Wei Yi replied e5. This was Wei Yi's 3rd black in the first 4 rounds, so he had a tough start of the tournament with 3 black games. The last of those 3 was against the world champion. Carlsen played bishop c4. He said he wanted to avoid the Petrov defense, which Wei Yi had played in the first round against the Russian Andreikin. The Petrov defense comes on the board after knight f3 and knight f6, and Carlsen did not want to play that opening today. Also, he said that Wei Yi has played this setup with white, and he was curious to see how Wei Yi would react, would approach this on the black side. Knight f6, d3, c6, knight f3, d6, Carlsen castled, bishop e7, bishop b3, and black castled. Carlsen commented here that it is no big deal, and what he meant, it's not an opening advantage for white, but he said it can't be much worse than the Ruy Lopez, and I think what he meant is that it's a playable setup. It's maybe slightly better for white, although it's nothing special. Carlsen played c3, knight bd7, rook e1, knight c5, attacking the bishop, bishop c2, bishop g4, knight bd2, and knight e6. Carlsen said here that this is not the most unpleasant plan to face for white, but it is quite solid for black. Here Carlsen was thinking about the move knight f1, which he didn't play, and he showed a number of variations. I show you some of them. He said after knight f1, black can play knight d7, knight e3 hitting the bishop, and then bishop h5 is an option. Then g4, kicking the bishop back, bishop g6, knight f5, and what Carlsen said here, he said, well, here I have achieved something, and an important reason is that in this position black does not have knight e6 to g5. Because if you play that move, yes, it's protected by queen and bishop, but you can then of course play knight takes e7 check in between. Queen has to take back, and then the knight on g5 is hanging. So this variation he thought that he had achieved something, but he did not play this variation starting with knight f1 because he said that after the move knight e3, where we just played bishop h5 for black, that black can chop off the knight on f3, bishop takes f3, queen takes, and g6, g3, and he said the bishop is coming to g5. I can try to go h4 here, but it's tough to make something of that. He said I cannot go d3, d4, and the knight on e3 looks like a nice piece, but is a bit clumsy. So that's why Carlsen rejected the variation starting with 11 knight f1. He played something else. These are all very strategic and very complex deliberations from Magnus Carlsen. Still, it's quite fascinating to hear what he has to say and what he was thinking about during the game. What he decided on instead of knight f1 is the move h2, h3, kicking the bishop. He said this was another idea that he was quite attracted to. Bishop h5, and now he played knight f1, knight d7, g4, bishop g6, knight g3, knight g5, and here Carlsen said the plan here, and he called it the big point here was to go knight g3 to f5, but then bishop takes f5, g takes f5, knight takes f3 check, queen takes, and bishop g5. And about this position Carlsen said, optically it looks kind of nice for white, but I think it's just very little. The bishop on c2 is not very good. The black knight will go to f6 and will sit pretty there. I will never checkmate him without the dark squared bishops, which are likely to be swapped here. And black plays king h8, rook g8, and then can go d6, d5. So in the end he decided against the move knight f5 because he saw no prospects in this variation. So this all came after knight g5 and then the 15th move knight g3 to f5 from Carlsen. He rejected that and decided on the move bishop takes g5, which was criticized earlier in the commentary by Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan of the main tournament broadcast. Seirawan did not think Carlsen should part here with his dark squared bishop. And he probably was right. Carlsen later admitted that he did not get any opening advantage in this game. Bishop takes g5 and d3, d4. Carlsen here said, in the game I didn't feel I was close to an advantage, so I should have done something different earlier on. Position is about equal. Bishop f4, and Carlsen commented here that the bishop is not doing much, but it's not going away either. It's a bit of an annoying piece. So knight e2, queen f6, king g2, and here came a very important moment in the game. Wei took on d4, which was called an absolute gift from black to white, according to Carlsen. He said that he had no idea why Wei decided to take on d4. We'll get to that in a moment. First, Carlsen said that here he had expected Wei to play h5, and he gave the following variation. Knight takes the annoying bishop on f4, queen takes, and that queen is very strong there, so white plays queen c1 to try and swap the queens. The variation continued with h takes g4, queen takes f4, and now a little in-between move, g takes h3 check, king takes, and e takes f4, taking the queen back. King g4, knight f6 check, and king takes f4, and d6, d5. This was the end of Carlsen's long variation, and here he commented saying that a lot of material is coming off, and he didn't believe that this was anything for white. So this variation started with the move h7, h5, and that's what Carlsen felt where you should have played, and then retain an equal position. Wei, as said, took on d4, which Carlsen called an absolute gift. He took back with the knight, rook fe8, knight takes f4, queen takes f4, and f2, f3. Carlsen said here, now I was optimistic again, I have the center, so I have something to play for. Pawn in the center, a knight in the center, and here he felt white was better. Knight b6, Carlsen said, I had not considered this move. Queen c1, trying to swap the queens. Carlsen said, I understood I had to play this move to get a very pleasant ending. Queen takes, rook takes, and d6, d5. Here, Yassasararon commented that f7, f6 may have been an alternative, and Carlsen said yes, but then black is doomed to a very unpleasant defense because it's very passive. And he said, I know people who would play this, and I have a feeling that he might have been talking about Sergei Karyakin, who in a World Championship match in November 2016 held a few very precarious positions against Carlsen by playing fantastic defense in very passive positions. So maybe Karyakin would have gone for the f7, f6 option, but that is not Wei Yi's style. He gave a variation here. Bishop b3 check, bishop f7. Of course you cannot go with the king to f8. I'll quickly show you, because then there's knight e6 check, and there's a fork when coming on c7, so the king goes, for example, to e7, and then there is knight c7 forking both rooks. So after bishop b3 check you have to play bishop f7, and then the bishops get swapped, and c3, c4 according to Carlsen. And he said here that black will never get d6, d5 in, and that he can go with h3, h4, h5. It will be very tough to win, but white has all the trumps in this position. So this was after the move f7, f6, which Wei Yi did not play. He played more actively with d6, d5. Carlsen said that it took him some time to understand that now e4, e5 is the right move here. First, it didn't look so bad for black. He doesn't have any weaknesses, and the majority on the king side, the 4 pawns against the 3 pawns, doesn't look so imposing. But Carlsen said it's difficult to play for black, so he was quite happy here. Carlsen also said that he had looked at e4 takes d5 instead of e4, e5, but he rejected it because of knight takes d5. And now he said, if I can play king to g3 and bishop to b3, I'll be extremely happy. But black is just in time to annoy me. What he meant was that if you play bishop b3 here, then there is knight f4 check, king g3, and then knight d3, and there's no white advantage. Your rooks are forked, so you have to play rook takes e8 to avoid losing material, rook takes e8 and rook c2, and it's about equal. So that's why Carlsen rejected 24 e takes d5 and played e4, e5 instead, which he liked better. Wei Yi played knight d7. Carlsen said that one of the points of e4, e5 was that you cannot not play knight c4, which looks very strong because you're attacking 2 pawns. You're attacking the b2 pawn and the e5 pawn. But Carlsen had foreseen this, and with f3, f4, he solves both the problem of the 2 pawns. Because if you now take on b2, then there's f4, f5, winning the bishop. So knight c4 was not the best, and Wei Yi played knight d7. f3, f4 from Carlsen. The bishops get swapped, and knight c5. Here Carlsen commented that for a player of Wei Yi's style, this is not what you want. He has a very tough defense ahead of him. Rook e3, rook a d8, king f3, knight e4, and Carlsen said this knight is not as pretty as it looks, and it's not stable on that square either. It looks indeed like a very strong knight in the center of the board, but it's not stable. Black is not able to maintain that knight there. b2, b4, a very strong move. And now Carlsen said this was maybe the time for f6. f6, e6, and knight d6. asking white how he's going to break through. It's very far from a fortress, but it would prolong the game for a long time, and this is what black should have gone for. That's what Carlsen said. Instead, Wei tried g6, sorry, g7, g5. Carlsen played c4, and here Wei played c6, c5. Carlsen said, yes, this is losing, but what can he do? The plan is knight to f5, and b4, b5 is a threat. And if he plays f6, that is met by e6. He said all the tension in the position is working in white's favor. And then Sarabon commented saying that that's not so surprising because white is playing with an extra piece. And what he meant, of course, was the king on f3. The king on f3 is very much in the game, is helping white's plan, while the king on g8 is not participating. So very interesting how grandmasters see that. They see this as white playing with an extra piece, and that's why a lot of the complications are resulting in an advantage for white. Knight b5, very strong move from Carlsen. What Carlsen said is that Wei probably had not seen this move. He had probably hoped for knight f5, and then he gave a variation: c takes b4, c takes d5, knight c3, d6, g takes f4, and rook e1. You cannot take that pawn with the king because there's knight d5 with a fork. But after rook e1, Carlsen said that he wouldn't want to be black. And indeed, this is a very nice position for white. That was after knight f5, but knight b5 was even stronger. And where he played g takes f4, king takes, c takes b4, c takes d5, and white is winning. Black resigned here, where he shook hands in resignation. Carlsen said he did not have to resign, even though it's lost. He gave this variation. He showed knight c3, knight takes, b takes, and then rook d3 to protect the d5 pawn. And he said it's very hard to play this. This is where he finished his analysis. Let me show you a variation. For example, b5, trying to get your majority on the queen side going. Rook c takes c3, b4, rook c7, a5, rook a7, attacking that pawn from behind, rook a8, the rooks get swapped, and then d5, d6. And white is a pawn up, and his king is much more active than black's king, and his pawn is further advanced than black's pawn. So this is an easily winning position for white. So Wei did not resign too early. Fascinating to hear Magnus Carlsen comment on his game just after the game, and it was great that he took time out to talk to his audience. These are the results of round 4. As I said, 4 draws and 3 decided games. We've seen Carlsen. There were 2 black wins, one from Wesley So, the American Grandmaster, and one from the tournament leader, Pavel Elyanov, who won again. He has won 3 of his first 4 games. These are the standings after round 4. Pavel Elyanov, the proud leader, and Carlsen and So half a point behind, and you can see the rest of the list there. Poor Luc van Wely has a tough time with a half out of 4, and not only that, but of course he will now be targeted by his opponents as being the player that they are hoping to score a full point against. And there's 9 more rounds to go, so Luc van Wely will have a tough time, and hopefully he can show what he's made of, because he's a very good player. Wednesday the 18th of January is the first rest day, so there will be no video on Game 5. On Thursday they play the 5th round, and I will be making a video on that round. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'm looking forward to reading your comments. This is Rick from Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.